Today, I want to talk about Canada. And the reason why is because recently their prime minister came out with a very fiery speech, basically admonishing some of the recent actions taken by the Trump administration and the US at large. And I think this is very important because I think this is something that has been a long time coming and will force the United States to react in a way that is more globally sustainable. Because recently we've kind of been on a wild tear. So what I want to do is I want to get into the actual statements and then provide some of my thoughts as to why this is such an important and necessary action that was taken. Hi there, pardon the interruption. I just wanted to make a real quick ask that if you are watching my content and you appreciate it, if you could please drop me a subscription. As you can see, through the life of my channel, 95% of the people that watch my content are not subscribed. So if you are watching and you find yourself enjoying the content, I would ask that you drop a subscription. Just, again, a really quick PSA, it would mean a lot to me. It really does help my channel grow, and it allows me to make this something that I can do for a living. So just wanted to take a real quick interruption, and I'll return you back to my video. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy.
So Carney, this is going to be a longer clip, but I think it's worth playing the entire thing because this is a seismic speech. This is the one where Trump is saying he wasn't that grateful, but this is a man that could not more fully embody globalization.
Yes.
Because he was a central banker in the UK, and then also over in Canada, and now he's the prime minister of Canada, yet he's giving one of the most kind of clear-eyed analyses of what the international order actually is and is becoming. So let's roll Carney. I think this is worth listening to the entire thing.
It seems that every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must.
Yeah, as a brief interjection, this is something that, again, I have thought of quite a few times, where I look at what is happening around the world, and I have said in the past, yeah, I could see a scenario where essentially Russia, China, the United States go out and just gobble up as much land as possible. They just, hey, each one of us go out and take over whatever you can. Because it seems like there are two types of nations in the world, which is ones that have nuclear weapons and ones that don't. So obviously there would be a couple other players in there as well. But yes, absolutely. It's like no one can do anything to stop these powers from basically going into other countries and meddling around. I honestly wish that every single country had nukes. That way it would stop us from screwing around with them. And that's, I mean, you just look at what happened with North Korea, where they got nukes and we stopped messing with them. Whereas before, it was just constant rhetoric ratcheting up and up and up. But since basically Kim Jong-un ended up getting in his country, right? He didn't do it by himself. But since they got nukes, you don't really hear much from them anymore. They're not in our news cycle. We're not constantly trying to undermine what they're doing. And I think if every single country had them, well, then we'd stop basically doing regime changes all around the world. And I think that would be a better world, to be quite frank. But going back to my original point, yeah, I could see a world where we just do that and just say, hey, go take over everything, because there's no way to stop these countries from acting in completely irrational ways. And no one is basically, they don't want to try and stop each other, right? China, Russia, the US, like any of these larger countries are not trying to stop one another. They're just going around doing basically whatever they want, and they have different approaches to doing this. Russia is overt, right, where they just go and invade the Ukraine. The U.S., and it's very complicated. I'm not trying to, there's a lot of intricacies such as U.S. encroachment, and there's a lot of reasons why. I'm not downplaying any of that. But then the U.S. is covert, where we just go into the Middle East and bomb places, and there's a bunch of, covert regime change that we try to effectuate. And then China is basically economic stimulus, where they go and do Belt and Road, and it's corrupt, but they're essentially paying for the resources from countries. So we're all approaching it in different ways. However, we're all doing essentially the same thing. So when you're seeing this, it's like, yeah, okay, why don't we just, mask off completely, go out and just conquer as much land as possible? I don't think that's good for the countries that would be conquered, but like no one is able to stop these countries, and short of every single country getting nukes, how are you possibly going to stop them from doing this? So this is, again, that's just something that has been in my head, and yeah, it is interesting and I think necessary to see him call it out, because otherwise they're just doing it covertly. But if you're just, hey, full mask off, you have to do it, or back off and knock it off and say, hey, middle-sized countries, we all need to get together and tell them enough is enough. That's why I think this is so important. But I'll let him continue with his statements.
And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't.
And that's a very powerful statement as well, because, and this is why I almost wish that NATO would completely fall apart, is because then all the other countries in Europe, and I'm sorry if you're a European viewer watching this, because I know I do have a few viewers in that area, but you need to have your own defense. Like, you need to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. And I'm sorry that that's probably going to come in the form of you losing some of your social safety nets that you have, like universal health care, like, whatever it is, there's going to need to be some sacrifices. But relying on the United States, number one, is not good for you, because you just have to go along with whatever we say, which completely distorts the world order, in my opinion, because it's like, okay, instead of forcing the United States to have to compete with the up-and-coming technologies of China, instead you just have to listen to what the United States says, and you have to boycott all the goods that are competing with U.S. goods coming out of China. Like, you could have very cheap automobiles, except for the fact that the United States has told you that you can't import electric Chinese vehicles. Well, do you think that's actually good for you? I don't. So when you're seeing these sorts of things, again, it distorts the market, and that's just one example of it happening. And by the way, it also makes it so that the United States then doesn't have to compete. And so then we just continually inflate our currency, and it's screwing over people in the United States too. That's the thing, is that instead of us having to compete on these levels with these other countries who are not only, producing these goods cheaper, but also have caught up and surpassed us technologically, well, now we can just, it's basically status quo in the United States. And then, okay, we can financialize everything and just rake money out of our economy instead of having to actually compete. And that's why we're essentially, in my opinion, a bloated corpse that's just people raking out money, and that's all that we're good for anymore. And so when you're seeing that, it is all an effect of us not having to actually compete. And so, yes, by everyone relying on our military, all the EU relying on our military, well, now you basically have to bend the knee to whatever we want. And that's not the only effect. It also allows us to back up Israel in committing a genocide and provide them the funding to do so, and no one calls us out. There's so many effects that I think are awful that come from this sort of status quo that is allowed to fester as a result of us being the guarantor of safety for all of the EU, the US, basically everyone who is included in NATO. So, yes, you need to, in my opinion, the EU, Canada, all these places need to break out of that and call a spade and say, we're not putting up with your BS anymore to the United States. And I think that will make it better for you. It will make it better for us. It will make it better for everyone because it breaks the stranglehold, essentially, in my opinion, that the military industrial complex has come to basically put on the entire US government. So, once again, that's just why I think it is so important that this speech is being said or was delivered, is because it calls out a lot of the things that I think need to happen. Now, whether these countries actually act on it or not, we'll see, but it is a good direction and it's something that needs to be said.
So what are our options? For decades, countries like Canada prospered under what we called the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim.
And literally in that statement, he just calls out every single thing that I just laid out. We're allowed to commit genocides when the entire ICC basically says that Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal, while the US comes in over the top and says, no, that's not going to happen. We're allowed to, hey, all of the EU, you all need to, and Canada, and Mexico, whoever, you need to put tariffs and basically make it illegal for Chinese electric vehicles and phones and all these things to come into your country. This is literally what he just said, without specifically calling out the examples. But that is exactly, he just said it right there. So he knows it's true. Everyone knows it's true. It just is something that needs to be completely destroyed because the outcomes, it doesn't really help all these countries that are grasping on to the United States' military might. It's not actually helping you in the long term. It's just, again, bending the knee to the United States and doing whatever we tell you. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for us. It's not healthy for the world. And I think it is a much better outcome when the United States has to be, when they are able to be the world police and actually stand as an example and have to lead by example and be exemplary. But when we're going out and we're just doing regime change everywhere and no one is able to call it out because they all rely on us, well, then it allows that to continue happening. And then, oh, by the way, we're printing money to allow these wars to go on, and we're devaluing our currency, and we're putting ourselves in the deepest hole possible that who knows if we're ever going to be able to break out. And yeah, it's just absolutely disgusting, and it needs to end.
This fiction was useful. And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals. And we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises.
And that is exactly right. And I think that is the only way that this actually gets changed. Because the biggest thing is with it is that the US has become such a bad actor, and it's gotten so much worse over time. And it gets more emboldened and more emboldened, and we can just go snatch up, forget what you think about Maduro, we can go snatch up a sitting president, whether he was actually rightfully elected or not. You can snatch up a leader there. You can go in and do a 12-day war and bomb nuclear facilities and kill nuclear scientists in Iran. You can do all these things that are like, it's just so flagrant what we're doing. And it's wrong. And the thing is, exactly as he's saying, no one can call us out. Because, again, you're all relying on the United States. All these countries are relying on the United States for their safety and their security and cheap goods from China and whatever. All these things that they just have been coasting along. And, again, it has emboldened the United States to make more and more insane actions, and no one can call us out. And it's just going to continue to get worse and worse until, like he said, eventually there's a rupture, and that's what needs to happen, and that's exactly what is happening. I mean, you're literally seeing, okay, threatening war with Iran, a blockade of Venezuela, talking about going in and doing military action against Greenland, whether it was realistically what was going to happen or not. All these things that are just so flagrant that yes, something's going to break at some point in time, and I feel like that time is right now.
In finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
All right, so one of the reactions has been, well, that's pretty interesting that you're willing to say that the international order was kind of a partial lie, but you were on the receiving end of some of the goodies, so you were okay with all of this injustice. Setting that all aside, it's from there, he goes on to say, okay, what do we do from here?
And as Ryan just said there, yeah, I mean, of course. And that's the thing, is if you're one of these countries, I think that's the best good faith way to move forward and to get other countries to come along with you. Because if you don't say that yourself and admit to it, where you go, hey, look, something is wrong here. Yes, we have been benefiting from it for a long period of time, but this is where, enough is enough. It has gone too far. If you don't go in that direction and actually call it out in that manner, it's not going to be as powerful of a message. It wouldn't have gotten the amount of traction that it did if he didn't say, hey, yeah, we've benefited from it for a long time, but things have gotten out of hand and we need to change course of direction. That empowers all the other countries, like the EU in general, to be able to also say, hey, yes, we're on board with what Carney is saying. We're on board with Canada's direction, and we too will step out and basically, we're joining in with the direction that he's taking. If you don't say that and you just kind of play like, oh yeah, we don't know what you're talking about, everyone else knows that this is what the facts are. Everyone knows that you have been benefiting from it for years, decades. And so for him to ignore that would completely destroy his credibility in this statement. But in calling it out and admitting to it, and then saying, but the ills are now outweighing the benefits from it, it allows everyone else to have a more sober look at what is the situation? What has been going on? Do we want to continue down this road? And I think the answer to that is no.
And what he says is, we're going to have to hedge our risk, and the risk is the United States, basically. We can hedge it alone and all be self-sufficient kind of castles, but that's going to make us poorer and make a less stable world. He's like, let's all get together, those of us who want to team up and hedge our risks together. Whether that's, and he talks about doing business with China, and they just let in, 60,000 of their cars, or doing business with Europe, and or anybody else who's interested in free trade over tariffs and not using kind of the international order as a weapon against each other, team up against basically the United States. So he's arguing, let's not do just our own individual castles, let's do a network of castles against this like completely unpredictable behemoth beneath us.
Yeah, sort of.
And the funniest thing about that is it basically looks like, okay, let's do exactly what we have now, but kick out the United States. Which, once again, I don't really have a problem with, because I think the U.S. needs a wake-up call. Again, we are acting so insane on so many fronts and so erratic and so, on again, off again with tariffs, on again, off again with military action, on again, off again. Like, again, I think the military-industrial complex has run amok. There is absolutely no stopping them. There's no voting on any military action by Congress, which there should 1,000% be. There's no, basically, we're just doing whatever we want, ignoring all of the rules that were set up for a reason in the United States, and just, allowing the richest to get whatever they want, allowing the military to do whatever they want. And I think, once again, it is a toxic poison to the United States. And I think this is the only thing that will get through to us. Because if the United States is forced to, hey, we have to do everything alone, or if we're backed up with, oh yeah, all these countries rely on us, and so they have to go along, our basic footprint is, 30 countries instead of one by ourselves. The U.S. cannot operate in a world where it is the lone power by itself. This system only works because there are a bunch of other countries that rely on us as well. And quite frankly, I wish that, if it is not clear to this point, I wish that was not the case. I wish the U.S. had to actually answer for and act right, but that's not the world that we live in right now. So once again, I think it is hopeful that everyone else goes along with the direction that Canada is saying, at least to threaten the United States, so they have to take a even slightly different course of action. Because we're just acting so wild, and it is completely unpredictable, and it's just not good. Again, it's not good for any of our allies, and it's not good for us.
Arguing that, well, I mean, this is like Ryan was saying, this is like a Bilderberg guy, UN climate envoy guy. And I think actually Trump and Mark Carney don't disagree on something fundamental, which is that this is a rupture of the international rules-based order. Trump is bragging about that. Carney is lamenting it. And I think that much, I mean, it's almost like he's late to this diagnosis, to be honest. And what's difficult for the Carneys of the world is that nobody is happy with, and I actually think, I'm curious what you make of this, there is a pretty good argument that what they decry Trump doing, using international order as a cudgel, using tariffs as a tool of manipulation, all of the, using Western hegemony to be a bully, all of those things were already happening, behaving like mafiosos. Trump is being more honest about it. Mark Carney is pretending that was never the case, and that what he really wants from the perch of the World Economic Forum and Bilderberg is just the rules-based international order. He wants the pretense, and there may be some value to the pretense just on its own, but he doesn't want the substance of it. He wants the pretense and not the substance. And what I think the rupture is, like, he's correct about the rupture point. Trump is correct about the rupture point. What he thinks it is, it's the end of the pretense, ultimately.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and here's the thing about that, though, is I don't even think it's as good of a pretense as they think it is, right? And I think that is the thing about why Trump has just dropped all the pretenses, which is totally fine. I actually prefer it. But that is the thing about the pretenses, is that no one believed them in the first place. So it's so silly that, oh yeah, we're going in to bring democracy to such and such a place. And it's like, no, we're not. Like, who actually believes that? Who's dumb enough to actually believe that that is what we were doing? No, we went in because they had some resource that we wanted, and or at the behest of Israel, especially when we're talking about the Middle East. And so when you are looking at that kind of stuff, again, I don't see what the actual value of it even is. And I think that's why he's calling it out and saying that we've been the beneficiaries of it, is because I have a slightly different reading of it, that, again, he doesn't believe it. No one believes it. Anyone who has risen to be the leader of a country is not dumb enough to believe that the rules-based order actually matters at all. And so that's why I am slightly at odds with her statement on that. I think maybe it just made them feel better about it, but at a certain point, it's like, come on.
he's saying his point is a little bit more nuanced in an interesting way. He's saying it was always a lie, but there was value in the lie.
Yeah, right. The value
There
of the
was
pretense. Right.
There was some restraining ability of the lie, like the myth.
Which is
and
why
so
I
we
can't
all
cheerlead
put our
him.
sign in the window. We all pretended to believe in it in the hopes
Yes.
that the lie could eventually become reality.
Yep.
Now he's saying that's just never going to happen. What the near term, it's interesting. The U.S. is choosing this moment. Like, the U.S. was probably on its way out of hegemony, either way, at some point in the next who knows when. The U.S. is choosing this moment to do it, or Trump is choosing it on behalf of the United States. It's not totally clear, and he's doing it over Greenland. It's not entirely clear that we're ready for this. Like, we have deindustrialized ourselves fully. We have not reindustrialized. Trump thinks if we just jump and go for it, that we'll land on our feet. So far, we're just falling. We can put up A1 here.
And yeah, to his point about the United States deindustrializing, yeah, that was actually our strength in World War II. It wasn't that the B-2s were that much more advanced, right? And the aircrafts that we were creating were super advanced. It's that we had these, basically the automakers, and they had these assembly lines where they retrofitted them so that they were creating airplanes, and we just pumped out a ton of them. And that was our strength. And so the fact that we have shipped a lot of that overseas or down to Mexico or wherever, that we've sent these factories abroad, well, now we don't have that strength anymore. And you're seeing that is why Taiwan is so important, is because when all the chips that are used for everything, basically every missile, anything in the military that is created now uses high-level chips and AI and all this stuff. And so when you have the bulk of the manufacturing being done on one little island right next to what is seen as our greatest rival, that becomes an issue. And so, yeah, that is the biggest problem with us deindustrializing, is that all these things that are critical to everything that would be important for waging war in today's world, then how can you possibly, unless you believe that we have big black book, like spaceships, like, these UFOs are ours, or, you have when we went in and took Maduro, the sound, right? The crippling all of the guards that they reported. Like, I guarantee you we have a bunch of black book, right? Black ops stuff that no one is aware of that exists. And so if that is the case, then yeah, we probably don't actually need those items like the chips as much as people who are speculating on the current state think that we do. Like, okay, if we have energy weapons that don't rely on conventional technology, right? Instead of bombs, we can just shoot lasers or, create hurricanes that decimate coasts or whatever it is. Things that all have, been proven that exist and that we have. Well, then in that case, yes, it doesn't really matter all that much that we don't have industrialization here in the United States. But if we do have to rely on conventional weapons like that, well, in that case, then yeah, it's a big problem that we deindustrialize. And there would be if they break off, we're combining these two ideas, the Carney speech with the deindustrialization here in the United States. If our allies all break off and go, hey, we're going to do our own thing and essentially kick the United States out, then that would be a gigantic problem because we don't create anything here. We can't lean on any of our allies to supply us with stuff, and it's just a very big problem. Assuming, once again, that we don't have unconventional weapons that don't rely on any of that, which I do think we probably do. Again, just using Venezuela as the example with sound-based weapons that completely crippled, basically not a shot was fired, and they were able to abduct the leader of a country. So this is all kind of hypothetical, but yeah, the deindustrialization is a huge problem because that was historically through the world wars what made us the heavy hitter that we were, was that we could just produce tons and tons of weaponry, of machinery, of planes, of tanks, of everything that's needed for a wartime military to go out and basically hold its own against a bunch of other superpowers. So that is just why, again, all the caveats, and that's kind of a long rant, but I think it's very important to lay out why it is such an issue that we're not industrialized. We don't create anything here. And that's why I decry the financialization of everything, is because it does not allow us to actually make new and better things. No, instead it's, again, just clawing money out of people, and there's nothing new or innovative about that. And it doesn't actually propel the United States forward. It's just, again, dining on the corpse of what is the United States as it is now.
Markets shed like 1.5 points, and the bond market crashed as well, which is unusual. Normally they don't both go at the same time. The effect for regular people, and by the people's 401ks and all this other stuff, that matters. But effect on regular people is brutal. So let's look at A9 here. This is and you just read this. Just days after mortgage rates hit a 3-year low, sparking a near instant surge in applications. This is applications for mortgages. Fresh trade tensions are threatening to undo that progress. Rates on a 30-year mortgage jumped 14 basis points to an average of 6.21% on Tuesday morning, according to Mortgage News Daily. You can put up A10, which shows just graphically how brutal this is. So, if you're just listening to this and you're not looking at the image, on January 9th, you see a collapse in mortgage rates, and that's what then gets people thinking, "Oh my God, finally we can move. We can sell the house. We can buy a house. Maybe this real estate market is unfreezing." What happened on January 9th is that Trump ordered the Treasury Department to start, and GSEs, to start buying a ton of mortgage-backed securities to make up for the amount of mortgage-backed securities that the Fed is kind of rolling back onto the market as it's unwinding some of its quantitative easing. So what that does, so you basically, a bank makes a mortgage, then they cut it up into securities and they sell it into the market. And if the federal government is coming in and buying those securities, that means that the mortgages can be sold at a lower interest rate. And so you're pumping taxpayer money into the market to push down mortgage rates, to unfreeze the real estate market, which I think is actually a good idea. Like, this is good. Like, people need, we need to unfreeze this real estate market. So Trump does that on January 9th, and it starts to work. Good for you, Trump. The guy's like doing his job. Then what happens? That's a Friday. What happens on Sunday night? Jerome Powell announces that Trump is trying to prosecute him. And so immediately the markets go haywire again. And then what does he do? And you can put up A11 here. This is about the mortgage-backed security thing. Then what does he do? He says that he's going to put tariffs on everybody who does any business with Greenland or whatever until Greenland is just handed over to him. And then mortgage rates spike right back to where they were when Trump intervened in the market to try to make them affordable. The only difference is now we've spent God only knows how many billions of dollars in this failed effort to push down mortgage rates. And now the taxpayer owns all of these mortgage-backed securities, which, you know, if the economy spins out of control, it means even deeper blot on our balance sheet. At the same time, this Danish pension fund.
And yeah, so I wanted to let him kind of go through play out the entire scenario before I comment on it, just to give you the full picture. But that is the thing, is it's so funny to me because it's literally Trump just shooting himself in the foot immediately. Like, he gets this small little win where he says, hey, go out, you know, buy up these mortgage-backed securities, start to get the rate down, which was his entire goal. And by the way, the entire reason that he was threatening Powell in the first place to try and kick him out, to bring someone in to lower the rates, which he was having an effect on. But then, oh, hey, I'm just going to literally destroy all of the progress that I've made on that front in 24 hours. And so, yeah, to me, it's just so funny. And you roll your eyes at it. And whether it was because there are some people who are claiming, oh yeah, it was just basically Trump making a hyperbole statement, you know, basically approaching with, we're going to take Greenland, whether you come to the table or not, to try and get an intermediary deal, which is what he actually wanted, and blah, 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 whatever. You can frame it however you want, but it completely destroyed the mortgage rates just immediately right after he got done lowering it. And the problem with that is that now it's going to be, you know, how does it go back down? Because you already had to put, I think it was like $200 billion into these mortgage-backed securities. And now what? You're going to have to pump another $200 billion? Like, it is just so insane to me. And yeah, the issue with it is again, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Like, you just destroyed all the work that you just did. And you undid all of it. This is, again, it's not helpful. And I'm sure he didn't foresee that would be what would happen. But yeah, this is just how, again, the military industrial complex or whoever told him that we need to go out and obtain the rights to Greenland or take over Greenland or whatever. However they decided to go about it, just screwed up the one victory that he could claim to have made at least some headway on. So, good job.
Announced that it was selling off all of its treasuries. You can put up A12 here, which contributed to the interest rates going up. This morning, Bessent was asked about this at a press conference in Davos. Let me see if I can find his exact quote. It's incredible. Yes, so Bessent said, quote, Denmark's investment in US Treasury bonds, like Denmark itself, is irrelevant. It's like, okay, well, maybe to you, because you're like rich AF.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're a billionaire.
You're not trying to buy a house or sell a house. You're not struggling. You don't care what happens to the American economy.
He did just sell his soybean farm, so he sold off his. So he does understand.
He found a buyer for the
plight
soybean farm. Good for him.
He also said, by the way, I don't know if you caught this. He was talking about Gavin Newsom. This is a quote from Scott Bessent this morning. I guess it would be afternoon in Switzerland time, but He said, quote, "I think it's very, very ironic that Newsom, who strikes me as Patrick Bateman meets Sparkle Beach Ken, may be the only Californian who knows less about economics than Kamala Harris. He's here this week with his billionaire sugar daddy, Alex Soros." The White House, as I mentioned, also proceeded on its rapid response Twitter account to say that Newsom, they posted a picture of him watching Trump's speech in the back of the room, was in the cuck corner chair.
Amazing.
White boy winter.
So Bessent, who is telling you that Denmark's purchase of treasuries is completely irrelevant, at A5, he also delivered another nice little Marie Antoinette moment. Let's roll this A5 side.
We are going to give guidance at some point to see what is a mom and pop that someone, maybe your parents for their retirement, bought 5, 10, 12 homes. So we don't want to push the mom and pops out. We just want to push everyone else out.
So even when Trump is doing something populist and cool, which is he's trying to push investors out of the home buying market, like BlackRock and these others that are coming in and trying to buy up all these homes, they're like, well, how are you going to define this? Bessent says, well, your parents might own 5, 10, 12 homes.
They might.
You don't want to push them out of the market. That's just a mom and pop buying 12 homes for your retirement.
Yeah.
Also, wait, now your parents are responsible for their kids' retirement? Oh, it's
Yeah, and that is, I can't stand Bessent at all. Every time I hear him talk, I'm like, he knows generally what he's talking about, but like he seems super slimy. He comes out with the worst takes, and I'm sure it's just out of self-preservation. I'm sure he has probably 12 homes, which is why he's putting, someone who owns 10 or 12 properties, it's not a big deal. We don't want to push them out. Oh, because you probably do. Or more, probably, but he's just framing it as a number that he sees as low. But yes, and recently in my video on private equity and housing, I have said, cap it. Again, another thing that happens is you need to kick out people like that who are making tons of money off of having 25, 50, whatever. They may not have thousands of properties, but if they have even 25, that can completely destroy a market. And so you need to cap the total number of single-family homes that any one person can own, LLC, whatever. You should kick LLCs completely out of the market, but then also cap the amount of homes that any one person can own to 5, we'll call it. I think that's a fair amount because, do you really need to have more than 5 homes? You can't live in any one of those for any amount of time that makes it justify your reasoning to own them. And or completely ban short-term, long-term rentals. Like, you actually have to own them and no one else is allowed to live in them or something. Like, something needs to be done. There's a lot of different ways that you can skin the cat, but you absolutely cannot allow any sort of loophole or exception to be made in that instance, because then guess what? Every single person at Blackstone will be an individual that owns 15 houses or whatever the number is that they come to, that you're allowed to have, an individual is allowed to have X amount of houses. And then they just find a loophole to that. So yes, you need to completely cut it off at the knees. You need to cap the amount of homes that any one person can have. It needs to be a very low number where it just, again, like, there is some sort of, yes, that's my vacation house on the East Coast. Yes, that's my vacation house on the West Coast. Yes, that's my ski home, my ski lodge in whatever. You want to allow, even though it's kind of insane that you would have that many houses, but you want to allow some sort of flexibility for people who have multiple properties. But again, at a certain point in time, you just need to completely cut it off. And yeah, it just, the way that it is functioning now, again, if you allow them to have too many properties, they just circumvent whatever the actual spirit of getting private equity out is, because then they just set up 500 LLCs, and each one of those LLCs, or 5,000 LLCs, and each one of those LLCs owns 100 homes, and so it just doesn't actually do anything. And that's why I think you need to boot LLCs out as well. If you're a rich person and you don't want people in your house, get some security. I don't know what to tell you. Like, yes, absolutely. I don't care that you want your anonymity. Guess what? No one else has anonymity. Why do you deserve any? Build a moat around your house. I don't care. I don't care what you have to do. You have the money to do it. I don't feel sorry for you. Figure something else out. No one's purchasing should be obscured behind an LLC. So yes, again, anytime I hear Bessent coming out with any sort of statement, I just know that I'm going to hate whatever he has to say, and this is no exception to that.
One thing, like high school, college to some extent, retirement?
Well, I think what they're, my assumption on that is what they mean is the Gen X and millennials who are about to inherit property from boomers, that would be a retirement nest egg, that you, because they don't own property. And so if your retirement is tied up in a house, not necessarily great financial planning, but I assume that's what he was referring to.
So if you do own 5, 10, or 12 houses,
Mom and pop,
then you're going to be taken care of by Bessent. Let's also roll A14, another cabinet member, Brooke Rollins, was criticized for.
And just, the mom and pop dig there. Yeah, that part of his statement is hilarious, because what mom and pop is purchasing even 5 houses. Like in my example of capping it at 5, how can you even afford, like I have one friend that owns 3 houses. And it's just insane to me, because even that is so, like, 99.9999999% of the people that I know do not even own 2 houses. And so to frame it as mom and pop, no mom and pop owns 5 houses. You're already a landlord, essentially, at that point in time. So yes, please spare me. It's completely hilarious, the framing of, owning 10 or 12 houses as mom and pop. Again, that's just why every time I hear him speak, I just want to slam my head against my desk, because it's completely outlandish the way that he frames these things.
Or telling people they can like totally survive just fine on a couple dollars a day. She went back to it, said she did a bunch of modeling and stands by it. Let's roll A14 here.
We had run almost 1,000 simulations, and between $3 and $4 is a fair number if you can have access to that food. So just about an hour ago, I saw new numbers that were run. A full day, meaning 3 full square meals and a snack, is about $15.64. $15.64. That's all 3 meals and a snack.
And just these people, I mean, the more you hear them, the more you just flip over the apple cart, like flip over the table, upset the apple cart. We're done here. This is insane. I would love to see, anytime someone comes out with a statement like that, please show me what your meals are in a day. Like, I just want your average. For a month, we just get to see what you eat every single day and how much money you spend on food. You have to actually try to survive on that amount of food yourself. Shut up. Until you do that, shut up. Because you have no idea. You're completely detached from what the actual reality of what it costs to go to the grocery store is. It is impossible to, I mean, you could, like, if you're going to eat ground beef and rice for every single meal, I guess you could survive on that. But, like, come on. You try it and you tell me how realistic it is for anyone to survive on that amount of money per meal. And it's like, okay, yeah, as if she's not probably going out to, dinners at fancy places. And like, are you willing to give that up even just for a month? I would love to see it, because I guarantee you she's not actually going to be put and have those rules enforced upon her. So just, again, it drives me up a wall having to listen to these idiots in these places of power, and she's the one who's directing what the rules and regulations are going forward. And just, I'm sorry, like, shut up. I don't want to listen to you. How do you get off saying this? Until you actually live under those rules, you're not allowed to enforce them. That should be the rule for all of these people, because they're completely detached from what reality is. It's laughable, that statement that she just made.
Snack.
And a snack. I mean, it's true. Like, if you go to Costco and you got the massive bag of rice.
Totally.
Now, I don't know who's going to pay the Costco membership, because that's practically $1 a day just for that. And you just ate rice for 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
And your snack would be the free samples in Costco. But yeah, doesn't work because...
No, actually what you have to do is you just go to Costco and you just stay there all day and you just get the $1.50. Actually, what she should have said is you can make it work off of $4.50 a day, because you can live in Costco. You just go there as soon as they open, although they don't open until 10 a.m. And so your breakfast and your lunch are going to kind of be really close together, but you can go and you can get the $1.50 hot dog and a drink, and you can do that 3 square meals 3 times a day. You can go to Costco and you can get a hot dog and a Coke, and that is your whole meal. So just, you know what, I stand corrected. Lower that dollar value down to $4.50. These fatty boom baddies, they can just live on 3 hot dogs and 3 sodas a day. You don't need any more than that, you greedy slobs, you pigs. How dare you demand more than $4.50 a day when you can go live at Costco? You can go to Costco 3 times a day, and that is how you can survive off of $4.50. We're cutting it down. You don't deserve any more food.
You just have to pay the membership. Meanwhile, she just cut a bunch of food stamps, so making it even more difficult. So, yeah. She wants to make sure that the administration wants to make sure people who own 12 houses aren't unfairly penalized by their rulemaking. But as long as you have $15, then you can get 3 meals a day and a snack. What on earth kind of government is this?
It's an interesting midterm strategy. Let's roll. So
this works for them.
Yeah, exactly. So CNBC has the markets rebounding today. I mean, you can see that, but they say they connect it to Trump telling everyone at Davos that, quote, he would not use force to acquire Greenland, easing a concern that has rattled markets and caused a flight from dollar-based assets. Ray Dalio raised some eyebrows with these comments from Davos that we wanted to roll for everyone. Obviously, Dalio of Bridgewater. It's sort of similar to the Carney clip, that it's an interesting, you use the word seminal, I think that's a good word for what Carney said. Here's Ray Dalio kind of reacting to what's happened in the last week or so, maybe even just the last 48 hours. The headline is going to be that and this is the one that CNBC used, quote, the monetary order is breaking down. Let's roll the clip.
Let's step back from the sensational and be clear about what I mean. The monetary order is breaking down. Okay. What I mean by the monetary order is that fiat currencies and debt as a storehold of wealth is not being held by central banks in the same way, and that there was a change. The biggest market to move last year was the gold market, far better than the tech markets, right, and so on. And the U.S. markets underperformed foreign markets.
And is this any surprise? Because I think this is a good thing. It needs to be completely obliterated, because it's complete BS. At any point in time, the U.S. just goes out and prints a ton of money, and then we can just effectuate wars wherever we want. If we actually had to budget, and the argument of, oh, Fort Knox, where's all the gold? Can we go audit that? Can we go take a peek inside Fort Knox and see where the gold is, if it's still there? Because I guarantee you it's not. But yeah, these fiat currencies need to be destroyed. And I think the thing that is showing that's complete BS is because China is essentially exposing it. They're saying, we've had enough of this. We feel like, okay, now we have the upper hand. We've situated ourselves in such a manner that we can go forward and say, we're done with this. We can call you out on the bluff. And now we feel strong enough that we can stand on our own. There may be some pain in us coming up, but we no longer have to basically listen to everything that the United States and their allies says. And so, yes, that is why it is happening now, in my opinion, is that, yeah, the countries, they're starting to band together, the ones that are sick of us, and they're saying, we're going to create our own rules-based order, and hopefully less warmongering will ensue.
Because of the fact you could see it in the numbers of the central banks and so on. So let's just look at the fact that on the other side of trade deficits and trade wars, there are capital and capital wars. And so as we're looking at that, and you reported what the stock market and so on, but you didn't report that the gold market is also up 3
We did say that earlier this morning.
Okay.
It's up to
But
record
I'm
levels
saying
again. And silver.
Is you look at what is happening and why it's happening and who's buying it. So let's just take a moment on that capital war issue, okay? We know that both the holders of US dollar denominated debt, which is money, and those who need it, the United States, are worried about each other, right? So if you have other countries who are holding it and they're worried about each other, and we're producing a lot of it, that's a big issue, right? So you have to explain what is going on with fiat currencies, generally speaking. And now if you take the conflicts, you can't ignore the possibility that capital wars, in other words, maybe there's not the same inclination to buy U.S. debt and so on.
Which is kind of a no-brainer if you think about it, because yes, absolutely, you look at what the U.S. debt is, and very soon, within the next couple of years, the debt, basically the interest on the debt, is going to be the second largest expenditure in the entire U.S. balance sheet. And so when you're looking at that, other countries it's all publicly available information. They go, yeah, they're just continuing to run off the cliff. And at some point in time, what is your actual plan to repay any of this debt that we continue to buy? Why would we continue to buy it when something's going to come to a head and you're either going to have to default or default or default or default? Like, there's no other conclusion that you can come to other than the US is going to come to some sort of financial chicanery to completely wipe out the balance books of all the debt that we owe. Whether we basically just tell everyone, screw you, we don't care, we're not going to pay any of this back, or whatever it is. At some point in time, yeah, we're not going to be able to make these payments. It's literally like a Ponzi scheme. That's literally what's happening, is because we say, oh yeah, we're gonna sell you this debt, and then it's basically all catching up to us right now. And so that's what's happening, and that's why a lot of these other countries, they have noticed this trend and that we haven't taken any steps to correct it. So what is that? I mean, that's literally the only conclusion that you can come to, is that basically the US is eventually going to have to default. And the writing is so clear on the wall that you would be an idiot to continue to buy up US debt at this point in time if you were another country.
At least need to talk about those possibilities and find out who is buying and selling what that is behind these market movements.
Ryan, that's basically what you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, so we're entering. It's going to be, what's the Chinese proverb? May you live in interesting times.
Yes,
we're getting that. These are going to be interesting times. This, again, the U.S. chose the time of this fight and I am quite skeptical that we are prepared for it.
I just want to say these people all suck. I mean, they all suck. Everyone sucks. Every part of this sucks. And it's the reason They don't have the moral. I'm sorry, I can't give moral high ground to Mark Carney and Gavin Newsom on this, or to a lot of Trump's critics on this. I don't think anybody has the moral high ground, because the reason, we know this, but the reason Donald Trump is president of the United States again is that the system is not working. The system is not working for average Americans. If you ask people in Canada, they'd probably tell you the same thing. If you ask people in the UK, they'll tell you the system isn't working for average Brits. It's all broken, and they fucking broke it. These people broke it, and now they want us to trust them to fix it, and we don't really have any other option.
Yeah.
And that's a very good point, is because this has been a long time coming. It's not like Trump just came in and everything blew up all at once. Now, again, he has masked off it. So he's just like, hey, we're done with the pretenses. But I think that's because it's gotten to the point of it's undeniable anymore. So he just said, hey, forget the false pretenses. We're just going to, hey, here's what it is, plainly. And for a good reason. Why make up BS when you see that China is challenging us? They're trying to cut off all of critical supply lines that we need. They're trying to basically usurp us. All these countries that are now basically striking out against us and saying we've had enough of what is going on here. But she's absolutely correct in saying, yeah, that's why Trump got back in, is that every single Trump the first time, 2016, was basically a protest vote against, hey, screw you, Hillary Clinton and the establishment. We don't like what has been going on. Then nothing real. I mean, things weren't awful, but people were, I think, upset with how radical the rhetoric and how crazy things seemed under Trump. So they were pissed off again. So let's go to what's not Trump in 2020. And then nothing got better for them. Things got significantly worse under Biden, partially because of COVID, but then also because he just status quo'd it. He was weekend at Biden's off, not doing anything. His cabinet was basically running everything, which was not great, I think, which once again is why Trump won again. Because on the ticket is, well, okay, things were marginally better under Trump than they became under Biden because inflation was just rampant. And greedflation, not even inflation, greedflation, because they just allowed these companies to raise their prices unchecked, just nonstop. And so they go, okay, well, maybe Trump will get it back under control. And I guarantee you, 2028, whoever is, if things do not get materially better under Trump, then it's going to be another protest vote. That's all it is. Protest vote, protest vote, protest vote. And then 2032, if things don't get better again, protest vote again, and it's going to swing back the other way. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And yes, these people now finally coming out and going, oh no, it's not working, and we're not happy with how things are going. You are the ones that allowed this to happen. And as much as I say, yes, it's good that it's finally coming to a head and that some sort of reaction is going to be forced, the hands are finally going to be forced. This was building for a long time. This was the ultimate outcome that was going to come of everything that they have been doing for decades. And that's why everyone hates on boomers, is because they are the ones that sat over this and basically allowed it all to happen. And yes, okay, it's not every boomer and blah, 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 like, okay, stop being so offended when I call out that your generation screwed it up, but that's what happened. Like, this didn't just happen in the last decade. Like, it happened over the course of time, and no one checked any of these powers that were doing it. And all the people who are boomers, you all voted for the people who are still in power. Like, there's a reason, and now the younger generations, you are at fault as well by not going out and voting and making your voices heard. Why are these politicians who are 80 years old dying in office? Like, it's everyone's fault now, but that is why everyone blames the boomers for this, is because those are the people who presided over what has happened over the last multiple decades, 20, 30, 40 years. And guess what? Now that's why we are where we are.
I started in politics fighting against globalization.
Yeah.
In the late 1990s, early 2000s. I didn't know that Donald Trump would be the ally that would take us into the castle and deliver us this victory.
Yes. It tastes so sweet, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Yeah. Disaster. Every Davos feels the same. Like, it feels like the exact same thing. But this one will probably, if you're looking for turning point moments in the history of Davos, to the extent we'll remember this one as something on its own, it's probably as, I think Carney is right, and Trump would probably agree with him that this is a moment of rupture, and that this is we've entered a new era, which we probably arguably entered it in 2016, but maybe not, to your point that Trump didn't have the same power and will that he seems to have now.
Yeah, and the opponents of globalization.
And exactly as he said, globalization, I am on his side 100%. I think it's awful for the United States because the entire goal of it is what we have reaped the benefits of up until it, again, has reached its end state, which is where we are now. Where it's, okay, we ship everything else out overseas to make commodities cheaper, like electronics, like all these things. But the problem is that only works as long as the companies are still based in the United States. And then what is happening now, though, is that countries like China have caught up technologically. So they are able to produce the exact same or better goods for cheaper. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out, well, if that is the case, who is going to want to buy your stuff as the United States if another country is making better things for cheaper? And that's why I use cars as the most gleaming example of that. And most obvious one is because, when you're looking at cars that outperform Teslas in luxury, in the distance, the range of the electronic vehicles, in whatever metric that you want to look at, well, they're outperforming Teslas and they're cheaper. And so what would you rather buy? And the only reason that they're not in market is because the US bullies basically all of our allies to not allow them to flow in. And so that is exactly it. That is why this globalization does not actually work, is because when a country is able to do that, catch up to and surpass, because again, it foments some amount of just sitting on our laurels. We can just status quo it. We don't have to innovate. We don't have to make things better because people just have to buy our stuff because we're out ahead. And we can bully anyone who is remotely competitive with us so they're not buying the Chinese goods. And when you're seeing that happen, okay, yes, it works for a certain amount of time, but when Canada's and other allies similar are breaking away and saying, no, now we're going to import it, globalization completely shatters, and you see what the flaws of that were all along. And absolutely there's going to be, as they said so aptly, may you live in interesting time. It's going to be very interesting to see what the actual outcomes of this are. And I think there will be a lot of pain and reckoning to be had by the United States.
We're arguing that the chief problems with it was driving down wages for people all over the world. Like the race to the bottom when it came to breaking unions hurt the workers in third world countries, and then it also hurt the middle class back in the United States. It was undermining democracy and sovereignty, that these globalized institutions were unaccountable to regular people.
Yeah, because you necessarily need to have cheaper wages in order to have cheaper products. And so that is exactly it, is, when you're shipping out all these jobs everywhere else, you have to have cheap labor there. Otherwise, you just move to another place and, okay, you have cheap labor in that area as well. Because, if it raises, then all the prices of all the goods are going to go up, and it completely destroys the point of globalization. So, there's a lot of, again, chicanery, financial chicanery here that is a huge problem, and that has led us to the point where we are now, where, yes, there is a competitor with, again, they were able to figure out, backwards engineer or steal the trade secrets of, or whatever. China was able to figure it out, and now they can produce better products at a cheaper price.
And also, it was destroying the planet on which we rest. So I'm not so sure that Trump...
Yeah, and that's another issue as well, is that's why, in actuality, why China and the US are so high above everyone else on their pollution, right? If you look at carbon footprint per country, is because, and now India as well. Yes, there are gigantic populations in China and India, but then the other problem too is that just think about all that shipping back and forth constantly through the Pacific Ocean, where, oh yeah, we're going to ship all the goods back and forth to the US. All the cargo ships, like when COVID happened, and there were all those cargo ships sitting out in the ocean, right? Waiting to come. That was constantly, those ships are constantly going back and forth, bringing goods to the United States and shipping all of the precursors to those goods over to China. So when that's happening, how much pollution, like one of those ships essentially is running for a year, is more than all of the pollution of like all of the cars in the United States. And so, yes, people don't understand that, but if you actually get where all this pollution is coming from, it 100%, globalization 100% destroys the environment. And that is the biggest, no one wants to talk about that. That's why all the elites who are pushing climate change can shut up, because they're the ones that are having the biggest impact by shipping all those camera parts over and getting them, Apple having their phones assembled in China and then shipped back here. Oh, wow. Oh, what a surprise that they're actually creating more climate change. But they don't want to talk about what are the actual causes of climate change, like all these shipping containers going back, ships that have all the shipping containers on them going back and forth to China. No. They want to blame you and your SUV because that does so much. No. These ships are what are actually doing it, and they're destroying the ocean, and they're destroying... if you worry about climate change, you need to attack these companies that are having all of their goods made in China and shipped over to the United States, because that is what the real villain is in the climate change story. But of course, they don't want to talk about that. That would be inconvenient.
Holds any of those values, whether it comes to dignity for workers, sovereignty for countries, or respect for the planet. So Trump may have defeated globalization, but what replaces it could be a much darker set of forces.
Anyway, I thought this was an incredibly important statement and just wanted to cover everything around it. Again, I think it's a complete mask-off moment. I think it is something that needed to happen. I think it's been a long time coming. And so that is exactly why I wanted to cover it. I think I really almost wanted to do an emergency recording this last week when when these statements came out, because it only would have basically been one video earlier. So I was like, okay, I can kind of wait and do it later. I don't need to turn it around immediately, but it is something that I think is immensely important. I think it is something that everyone needs to be paying attention to. I will be very curious to see exactly how this plays out, because once again, the currency, how we're going to interact with allies going forward. Again, the Greenland thing seems to have kind of solved itself for now, but yeah, there's been a ton of upheaval in the last week, and I'm just very curious to see where it all goes from here. But if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.